Tensions in the South China Sea are accelerating. As maritime disputes escalate, nations across the region are rapidly expanding their military footprints. Look at Vietnam's position on this map. Its extensive coastline and maritime borders put it right on the fault line of these disputes, making it uniquely vulnerable. To defend that airspace, Hanoi relies almost entirely on a legacy fleet of Soviet-era combat jets that are rapidly approaching retirement age. Specifically, they operate about 25 to 30 of these Su-22M4 ground attack aircraft. Airframes from the 1980s simply cannot survive in a modern, networked battlespace. They lack the capabilities to evade today's advanced AWACS and dense ground-based air defense systems. This aging hardware is a stark contrast to the modernization happening right across the border with their primary regional adversary, China. Beijing is rapidly expanding its PLA Air Force, projecting a fleet of nearly 1,000 J-20 stealth fighters by 2030, alongside hundreds of other modern jets. Facing this massive capability gap, Vietnam has no choice. They have to make a multi-billion-dollar procurement pivot, and they have to do it right now. To replace that legacy fleet, Hanoi is currently weighing two very distinct paths. The first option on the table is the combat-proven 4.5 generation French Dassault Rafale. The second viable option is Russia's newest fifth-generation stealth platform, the Su-57. But evaluating these two aircraft isn't a matter of comparing top speeds or turning radiuses. This decision forces Vietnam to choose between two completely different national security operating systems. Do they rip out decades of existing infrastructure to secure a highly reliable Western supply chain? Or do they double down on familiar Russian hardware, despite Moscow currently facing heavy global sanctions? How Vietnam answers this question will serve as a practical blueprint for how legacy, non-aligned nations survive in the modern Indo-Pacific. Let's look at the French path first. The Rafale brings serious multi-role capabilities to the table, handling precision ground attacks, maritime anti-ship strikes, and air superiority operations. Its major technological draw is the Spectra electronic warfare suite, which provides robust detection and automated countermeasures to defeat incoming missile threats. Strategically, its 3,700-kilometer ferry range allows for deep operational reach into the South China Sea. More importantly, selecting the Rafale permanently diversifies Vietnam's weapons supply chain away from Moscow. Bringing a Western aircraft into a Soviet-built military requires a massive logistical trade-off. Western systems are incompatible with Vietnam's existing Russian munitions, forcing Hanoi to build a new stockpile from scratch. Factoring in new maintenance and training, the Rafale's total lifecycle costs rise exponentially. Even if they accept the cost, there is a second major hurdle: the timeline. Dassault Aviation is managing a massive production backlog. As of 2026, they have nearly 220 Rafales on order globally from clients like India and Indonesia. Because of that heavy commercial commitment, even if Vietnam signed a contract today, they couldn't realistically expect initial deliveries to begin before 2030. The Rafale offers long-term geopolitical independence, but waiting until 2030 leaves Hanoi with a dangerous multi-year capability gap as their legacy jets age out of service. That timeline risk makes the Russian Su-57 an attractive, immediate fifth-generation alternative. The primary advantage here is logistical. The Su-57 offers seamless plug-and-play compatibility with Vietnam's existing infrastructure. This continuity directly applies to their fleet of 35 Su-30 Mk2 fighters, as well as their advanced S-300 air defense networks. This preserves decades of built-up Air Force maintenance expertise, effectively saving Vietnam billions of dollars in pilot retraining and facility construction. Tactically, the Su-57 has seen actual combat deployment in the Ukraine war, primarily used for long-range standoff strikes. However, reports indicate that while the aircraft has impressive frontal stealth, it is noticeably vulnerable from the rear when navigating heavily defended airspace. And then there is the geopolitical reality. Selecting the Su-57 means tethering Vietnam's defense entirely to a Russian supply chain under severe Western sanctions. Even without sanctions, Moscow is struggling to produce enough aircraft to meet the demands of its own domestic armed forces amid the ongoing war. So the Su-57 presents a budget-friendly, plug-and-play option today, but it carries massive long-term vulnerabilities regarding parts supply and international isolation tomorrow. The harsh reality of this dilemma is that there is no frictionless path forward. Any choice requires a massive compromise in time, money, or autonomy. This chart plots the paths nations can take. To understand how governments approach this, we have to map out their priorities. First, you have the status quo optimizer. If a nation has an exceptionally tight budget and preserving existing maintenance expertise is their only priority, doubling down on the Su-57 makes logical sense. On the other side is the strategic pivot. This fits nations willing and able to endure a decade of transition pain to permanently secure independent Western capabilities. But high-threat nations facing immediate border pressures, like India and now Vietnam, often cannot afford to sit neatly in either of these extremes. That leads to a third option, the pragmatic hedger strategy. Instead of an either-or scenario, this hybrid model suggests procuring limited numbers of both aircraft. By buying off-the-shelf Su-57s right now, a nation bridges the immediate stealth gap against an adversary like China. Meanwhile, the Rafale orders process in the background, building long-term Western stability for the 2030s. The trade-off, of course, is that running this hybrid approach creates a permanently biallocated supply chain. You are actively doubling the complexity and cost of your national defense logistics forever. But in the modern Indo-Pacific, achieving credible air deterrence isn't cheap. It might just require paying the ultimate premium, funding two rival ecosystems at the exact same time.